All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Hi there. My name is Parker Menzimer, and I'm the Public Programs Manager at the Poetry Society of America. I'd like to welcome you all to our space. Thank you so much for being here. I'd like to welcome as well all of our friends who have joined us from all across the country on the live stream. This is our first live streaming event, and I'm very grateful to all of you who have tuned in for this wonderful second installment of our spring 2025 reading series. So tonight I have the pleasure and the honor of introducing two what I would say are veritable giants of American poetry, Edward Hirsch and Patricia Spears-Jones. And these are two poets who have given poetic shape to America's contrapuntal and often very contradictory symphonic sweep, and have lavished a special attention on civic spaces in American people, and especially the urban poor working class, racially and culturally marginalized people, the immigrant, the outsider, the people who give our country really its grandeur. I'm really grateful to be able to honor their work, especially for that reason this evening. We do have their most recent collections here for sale. So we have Edward Hirsch's Stranger by Night and Patricia Spears-Jones's The Beloved Community. And I hope that you will stick around after the reading, buy a copy, get it signed, speak with our poets. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here in the space together. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, or if you're not familiar with the Poetry Society, I'll just say that this is an organization that has worked for over a century to place poetry just sort of in the center of discourse in American life, something that I think we can all agree is a worthwhile cause. And we are a membership-based organization, and sustaining members allow us to present programs like this and present public art here in New York and all around the country, in national parks, in New York City subways. So if that moves you, if you're a friend of the cause, we hope you'll consider joining as a sustaining member and then coming to our events like this one for free, membership perk. So with all that said, I'd like to introduce our first reader, Edward Hirsch. Edward Hirsch has been one of the great champions of American poetry, and it's a privilege to present his work here this evening. A MacArthur Fellow, Hirsch has published 10 books of poems, including Gabriel, a poem, which the New Yorker called a masterpiece of sorrow. That book-length elegy for his son established Hirsch, who already needed no introduction to readers of poetry, as a master of the form of elegy. And in his latest collection, Stranger by Night, he develops that gift, remembering friends and fellow travelers, including poets like Mark Strand and Philip Levine, and summoning vivid memories of Midwestern cities and coal towns where high school students fill poems with black damp, pickaxes, lanterns, and mine shafts. I love how Hirsch can imbue plain language with a sense of mystery, speaking clearly to our reason while encouraging and activating a more intuitive and you might even say spiritual apprehension of the world. In poems that move from job sites to cemeteries, he invites us to consider the long arc of a life in poetry in his latest book, celebrating both the young man who hauled bags of ice up and down the stairs at Purity Delicatessen, for whom, quote, every poem was a secret, and also the poet of experience who claims not to write elegies anymore. He writes, "It's time for someone else to mourn." In addition to a prodigious quantity of poems, Hirsch has championed the art across 7 anthologies of poetry, among them 100 Poems to Break Your Heart, and more recently, The Heart of American Poetry from Library of America, as well as a forthcoming memoir, which I believe is out in June, entitled My Childhood in Pieces. And please welcome our first reader, Edward Hirsch.
All this time, all these years, I finally met a young person who introduced me by reading my work. I'm just overwhelmed with excitement. Thank you. Thanks to all of you. I remember how much the Poetry Society meant to me when I was first starting out, a kind of lifeline to a world that I had only imagined. You're working on your own, you don't really know poets. The Poetry Society gave us an idea of how we might be part of a community. Very glad to be with you and be reading, and to be reading with Patricia, whose work I admire so much. There you are.
Can I just ask you to try to speak a little into the mic for the live stream? Thank you.
Now he lowers the hammer. Black rhinoceros. The black rhinoceros at Brookfield Zoo, eating sweet potatoes, carrots, and bread, looked like my uncle's extended family crowding around the table at Thanksgiving. Mrs. Mulvihill suddenly started crying on the second grade bus, which often stalled. And the next day we had a substitute teacher who said that rhinos have poor eyesight and swivel their tube-shaped ears in all directions so they can see their enemies approaching. Lions and people who carve their horns into daggers or mash them into pain relievers. My parents bought my shoes on discount at Walensky and Levy, and so whenever I raised either foot, my soul said, damaged. That's why I kept my feet close to the floor. When Mrs. Mulvihill returned, she wore dark dresses and told us that the black rhinoceros is the same muddy color as the white rhinoceros, which is strange if you think about it. And we did. What does it feel like to have two horns tilting up on a huge head, Mr. Rhinoceros? You lumber around in your skin of armor like an exiled general or a grounded unicorn. Everyone knows that a pachyderm in peril would still rather live in the open savanna. We can't tell if you're trumpeting forward or backward in your scrubby house. Cotton candy. We walked on the bridge over the Chicago River for what turned out to be the last time. And I ate cotton candy, that sugary air, that sweet blue light spun out of nothingness. It was just a moment, really, nothing more. But I remember marveling at the sturdy cables of the bridge that held us up, and threading my fingers to the long and slender fingers of my grandfather, an old man from the old world who long ago disappeared into the nether regions. And I remember that 8-year-old boy who had tasted the sweetness of air, which still clings to my mouth and disappears when I breathe. Thank you. This is a 4-line poem that I'm translating. It's the only poem they know by a poet named Niconitis from the 3rd century BCE. And I was so moved by it that I wanted to adapt it. Traveler, I'm the grave of Baitan. If you go from Tyrone to Amphipolis, give Nicarachus this message. His only son died in a storm in early winter before sunrise. No, I'm reading from Stranger by Night. My friends don't get buried. My friends don't get buried in cemeteries anymore. Their wives can't stand the sadness of funerals, the spectacle of wreaths and prayers, tear-soaked speeches delivered from the altar, all those lies and encomiums, the suffocating smell of flowers filling everything. No more undertakers in black suits clutching handkerchiefs, old buddies weeping in corners, telling off-color stories, nipping shots. No more covered mirrors, black dresses, skull caps, and crucifixes. Sometimes it takes me a year or two to get out to the backyard in Sheffield or Fresno, those tall ashes scattered under a tree somewhere in a park, somewhere in New Jersey. I am a delinquent mourner stepping on pine cones, forgetting to pray. But the morning goes on anyway, because my friends keep dying without a schedule, without even a funeral, while the silence drums us from the other side. The suffocating smell of flowers fills everything, always. The darkness grows warmer, then colder. I just have to lie down on the grass and press my mouth to the earth to call them so they would answer. The black dress. I don't know why I opened her book almost randomly on a whim. It signaled me from the shelf after all these years, like a burning black dress tangled in the branches. Her dress. She was the one who was burning. And that's when the letter fell out. A love letter, sort of, after we'd given up on each other. Or did we? Our impossibility. And suddenly it came back to me in a rush. That night in Boston, a restaurant on the harbor, a storm simmering outside, that slinky black dress she was wearing. I didn't know she was burning inside of it. I thought it was the coming storm, summer lightning. I didn't know I was turning the pages of her book, her body, which I would read so closely. I wanted it so desperately. She was the fire. I didn't know she was already burning. She was already mourning for her childhood in the orchard, her lost self. Forgive me. I didn't know she was burning when she took off that black dress. Thank you. This is for us. It's called The Guild. It's a kind of elegy for all the poets that I've spent all these years with trading poems, many of them not alive anymore. Our shared passions. The Guild. Goodbye to the years we spent leaning over badly typed poems in cramped studies and dank hotel rooms, half crazed, inconsolable, constantly jabbing pencils at each other, brooding, smoking on the balcony across from a temple on the other side of the river one night in Rome, loyal, disloyal to the old gods, our flawed mentors, our weakness for standing at the podium seeking applause, slashing lines, reciting Blake or Yeats, giving up sleep for late night sessions, listening to Coltrane, and gossiping about new books and poets who've been dead for centuries, facing each other knee to knee or sitting side by side over each fresh draft, furiously arguing about this enjambment or that illusion, mysteries of the craft, the muse, our shoulders touching, our voices growing hoarse with laughter, or walking out to the pier a few yards from the sea so that we could stand there together under the stars, alone with the abyss. You recognize yourselves, all crazed. Stranger by night. After I lost my peripheral vision, I started getting sideswiped by pedestrians cutting in front of me, almost randomly, like memories I couldn't see coming, as I left the building at twilight, or stepped gingerly off the curb, or even just crossed the wet pavement to the stairs descending precipitously into the subway station. And I apologized to every one of those strangers jostling me in a world that had grown stranger by night. A baker swept by. You were already losing your eyesight last winter in Rome when you paused in the doorway at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and a baker swept by on a shiny bicycle, waving a cap and singing under his breath. You didn't know bakers wore white aprons dusted with flour and floated around the city like angels on a freshly baked day. You weren't sure why morning halted up and down the street as you stood in the doorway and a baker winged by on a weekend morning, so new and pristine that you looked into the sky, and for one undiminished instant of misplaced time, you saw brightness, brightness everywhere, before a shadow crossed the rooftops, and it was blotted out. Let's get off the bus. Let's get off the bus in 1979 in front of the empty fairgrounds on 8 Mile and Woodward and stop for a few rounds at the Last Chance Bar. The moon is tilted at a rakish angle, and we can toast the unruly poets of Detroit and praise our students who work 3 jobs and still show up for class. Don't get lost in the sad stories of the regulars, and make sure to step over the junkies on the corner and dodge the cars barreling past the stoplights to the suburbs. Let's surprise my wife, who is nipping off her grief, and crank up the stereo for Stevie Wonder's road trip through the secret life of plants. Someone has started a garden on the far side of Palmer Park. Or is it Woodlawn Cemetery, where we can throw a party for our friends who are still alive? Thank you. I walked out of the cemetery. I put down my prayer book and sifted through a wave of fresh mourners gathering at a nearby grave. I didn't stop to ask who had died. I didn't wait for the 8 pallbearers lurching toward us with a casket in their hands. I didn't even pause to wonder about a young woman lifting her veil and applying lipstick under a long limp sycamore by the side of the road. For once, I didn't look back. The dying goes on. It never stops. There was a new procession of black sedans winding down the lane, but I didn't hesitate to step around them on my mission to leave these hallowed grounds. I felt so liberated I couldn't help waving to a group of teenagers, listening to rowdy music and drinking beer in the parking lot behind the chapel. This is a poem I wrote during the pandemic, right at the beginning. 8 people. 8 people died on my block in Brooklyn this week. I didn't know what it meant to be living at one remove from each other, wary, isolated, locked up with the relentless bad news, while ambulances cruised the neighborhood, which was otherwise so calm and quiet that I wondered if God too had gone into hiding and sheltered in place. And then just 2 more poems. Don't write elegies. Don't write elegies anymore. Let someone else stumble past the mausoleum and grieve under the calm shade of a plane tree, wiping away the tears of his ex-wife, staining the knees of his black suit, first sobbing, then choking back sobs, comforting others, consoling himself by scrubbing the white stone and weeding the plot year after year. I'm sorry. It's too sad. It's time for someone else to mourn my dead. Though who else can do it? I just need to lie here a while longer, face down in the soil, and then get up and breathe. And finally, this poem, I was never able to pray. This is a poem that, to my great joy, the Poetry Society of America put in Park in Red Hook, and the park system came up with this wonderful way of presenting it so that the poem goes along a fence, and the lines are arranged like this, so they go, as you'll see, the poems are like lines and waves of a sea, and it goes out to on the pier towards the sea, and the lines sort of all float that way. It was wonderfully original visual representation. I was never able to pray. Wheel me down to the shore where the lighthouse was abandoned and the moon tolls in the rafters. Let me hear the wind paging through the trees and see the stars flaring out one by one like the forgotten faces of the dead. I was never able to pray, but let me inscribe my name in the book of waves and then stare into the dome of a sky that never ends and see my voice sail into the night. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Edward. Thank you. So you might know our next reader, Patricia Spears Jones, as a force of New York City poetry, which for decades she has helped to shape and foster. Or you might know her as a fixture of the Manhattan theater scene, or as an editor whose volumes include an anthology of poetry by New York City women. A nimble and very urgent intelligence of our time, Spears Jones, New York State poet, has published 5 collections of poetry and has received the Jackson Prize and awards from the NEA and the Foundation for Contemporary Art, among other major recognitions. The title of her most recent collection, excuse me, The Beloved Community, borrows the term that Dr. Martin Luther King liked to use for what he saw as the achievable goal of unity in American society through racial solidarity and nonviolence. And Spears Jones's collection conjures a utopian, but sometimes elegiac vision of a beloved community in New York. It chronicles encounters with poets and neighborhood characters on the Lower East Side, and the unmistakable feeling of Brooklyn blocks in summer. The beloved community includes poems addressed to and written collaboratively with fellow poets, and this, to me, highlighted Spears Jones's commitment to poetry as a social form. But through it all, her remarkable and very singular voice is foregrounded, one that, to my ear, blends the portentous symbolism and the grand elocution of Romanticism with the offhandedness of the New York school in a lovely way. She has taught at Barnard College, Hunter College, Adelphi University, and is an emeritus fellow for the Black Earth Institute and an organizer of the American Poets Congress. Please welcome Patricia Spears Jones.
Short. He's tall, I'm short.
Is that right?
Mr. Hirsch. That was just amazing. What an extraordinary thing. Well, a couple of things. One is I'm going to read not just from the Beloved Community, but also from A Loose and Fire, because it was a finalist for the William Carlos Williams Prize. It should have won, but that's okay. All right, and just a couple of poems from it. It's the first day of spring, and so here is a spring poem. Hello, how are you? Welcome, bienvenue, welcome. I'm sorry. And Gabriel. Okay, sorry. The mic is there. Do you hear the mic? Okay. Welcome. Okay. Spring snow. Unlike the young loves in Mishima's spring snow, I cannot trust your mouth's promised eagerness, sweetness. Oh, that's what I'm missing. Give me that. Yes, it's known as the reading glasses. You know, sorry. Because I got cataract surgery. And once you have cataract surgery, you can see New Jersey. But you can't read. Now, to go into the poet's mode. Spring snow. Unlike the young lover in Mishima's spring snow, I cannot trust your mouth's promised sweetness. First love was long ago. On Brooklyn streets, cherry, apple, and pear blossoms quiver in harsh wind. Darkness comes quickly, as does snow unexpected. Heart's anger glistens. All roads are hazardous, but take them we must. And then during the remember President Obama? Remember him? So during his first term, there was a wonderful anthology of the first 100 days. And I think I'm day 53 or 54. But this is what I wrote, and I kind of feel like, write it now. Okay. It has a epigraph. Niagara Park's police chief Doug Kane said the man, quote, voluntarily entered into the water and refused medical assistance at the bottom, unquote. And the title of the poem is What the Fates Allow. 1. Sometimes a plunge is a plunge. Depending on time of day, sleeplessness repeated, seeking bottom. The world is fabric unraveling, thread by thread, and Cloto and her sisters appear to be on strike. Enough, you despoilers of our hearts, consumers of our children, disbelievers and betrayers of health. We won't help you anymore. So they sit chatting about how the rainbows used to be prettier and why the old gods are so useless nowadays. And while one man refuses rescue in the north, another murders kith and kin in the south. Aisha's list. Waterfalls are fiercer than we imagine. Family bonds weaker than convention's desire. These voluntary moments of desperation, that mayhem on a sunny day in the sunny south, mirror our media's advertisements for quote-unquote domestic abuse. The boyfriend vaguely contrite, the girlfriend nowhere in sight. Should she return? Should he go to jail? Duet recorded and soon to be released. Meanwhile, teenage girls are beaten daily, leading to a brisk business at cosmetic counters. 2. Our continent's resources were so abundant, many nations thrived even as newly arrived Europeans sacked temples and released horses, pigs, changing travel, topography, the hunting rights so carefully negotiated. Fevers, deaths, the quest for more land, more gold, an old story made young again in the glass wall structures of ravenous plutocrats. How this experiment in democracy became formidable and was almost lost in the dust and quiver of towers dashed, a crisis fraught for the corrupted pleasure of a Shakespeare reality show, Hal to Henry, but no Falstaff, leaving us with this moment of scarcity, anxiety, and change, making some of us giddy and hopeful. No president, no matter his heart's strength and his mind's obsidian edge, can do what we all must do. Seek Lachesis' wisdom, beg the spinner's forgiveness, offer up our desire for a world made whole, with threads from a stronger, more flexible fabric, illuminated our future shared differently. Obviously, that didn't work. So, the beloved community, in some ways, yes, it responds to Dr. King's statement, but in other ways, it also talks about how the community is fragile, and sometimes it does not hold. And so it is not utopian. I have to disagree with you on that one, honey. It's not dystopian either. I think it's real. And I also, when I titled this book, I realized that the poem, The Beloved Community, is a small poem about a small moment in Brooklyn. The Beloved Community. The Bangladeshi man walks slowly, so slowly. I know he is ill. He shuffles a broom about the laundromat, then sits in front of the largest dryer. Then a Latina comes in, frantic, pointing at the flyer posted on the laundromat's window. What happened? She asks. The attendant says she died. But when? How? 2 weeks. 2 weeks, he says. He knows only this, dead 2 weeks. The memorial is for later in the day in a place far from Halsey. The flyer's crisp image of a black woman's face, smiling, young-looking, but she was not young. 2 weeks. La Senora shakes her head, her purple-streaked hair tamed by her sadness. She always said hello. She was always smiling. She says this to me. I nod and try to smile with her memory. She looks once again at the image, black and white, utilitarian, on the glass surface, then walks out onto the sidewalk, undone by new grief. Okay. More Brooklyn. So this poem has legs. That's all I gotta say. It's been everywhere. It's done everything. And now it's gonna be here again. Morning glory. Sunlight softens. Helicopters hover. Skies above Brooklyn. Presidential visit. Murder investigation. Matters little. Noise in the skies. Noise on the ground. You should prune the morning glories, I tell my elderly neighbor. She refuses. She likes the way the vine has curled around her fence with a ferocity that cannot be so easily cut back. I get that. Wildness is rare on a Brooklyn city block. Old roses return late May as if to say, ha! You think we do not know the season? Squirrels roam the bricks of buildings while the gleaners fight with raccoons for the spoils of left-out trash. Huge green leaves for plants with names unknown to me sparkle on mornings bright, and dead tree leaves demand constant sweeping away. The tabby is big, old, and tired. Too many kittens, not enough food. These are ungenerous cat lovers. Neighbors greet each other and shake their heads at the young men and women, mostly, but not all white folk, running, or their faces drowning in a pool of handheld devices. You almost wish they smoked or cursed, had personality, but they run and run and run. Thus, the joy of this vibrant morning glory vine, rooted in her garden's disarray, happily dominating. Oh, morning glory, purple, green leaves plump as Italian cookies. Blossom your hearty display for all to see. Hold your vine's haven on Macon Street. Only winter, harsh winter, will take your vines back to the ground, your wildness calmed. And then another fun poem about Brooklyn. I like Brooklyn. I don't know why, but I do. Well, I do know why. So here's one of the reasons why. Mermaid and Surf, which are two streets in Coney Island. Mermaid and Surf. Looking at the modest buildings on Mermaid Avenue, the signs chatter English, Spanish, sort of Chinese. As the bright sun's cracked rays splash walls and windows, you see that Mermaid is where the locals go to pray at a shrine offering solace and recovery, buy mangoes and apples and chicken, or get their hair done by African women all the way from Timbuktu. Surf Avenue is the boundary between neighborhood and fun seekers' noise and trophies, and candy, beaches, bikinis, and beer. There, we spy the secret psychic shack. She's not there to offer solace in the name of a soulmate desired, but she does not need to tell us about death, which is everywhere. Hear it in the shouts of the riders from the top of looping rides, in the Atlantic's dark waves, and the cut flesh and burned hands of fry cooks come for the American dream, but lately riding the night's angry mares. And because this is Women's Month, the next few, International Women's Month. And you're not supposed to use women in any correspondence for the current administration. I saw that list, and they had women on it. I don't know what you're going to say. Girls, cousins, I don't know, whatever. Leontine Price sings Pace, Pace, mio Dio. Peace, peace, my God. Peace, peace, my God. The peace that fell there, here, the peace that falls and keeps falling. My God, we need peace, peace. The crows seek shelter, perch there, perch here, perch up near the lamplight line. Sidewalks splattered with crow shit. It's all hit and never miss. The crows laugh loudly. They caw and caw as in a cartoon. Then swoop up again, searching for a line of wire strong enough to handle gossip. Perch here, perch there. A noisy line of brassy birds ready to eat up all the leftovers. Heck, the pigeons refuse this massive waste. Species specialization are just the luck of the draw. Claws when needed for the rescue or respite. Peace, peace, dear God. The soprano sings her plea. She wants calm, a serenity, not the violent destiny the opera brings to all women. The dagger, the strangled neck. Peace, peace, my God. Why the dagger, the poison, the strangled neck? When did art become the home of murderers? The crows know that humans are malicious and wasteful. They calculate the many droppings we dispose of, meat, bread, dead vegetables. They can taste what they want, but what sickens us sickens them. Pace, pace, mio Dio. Pace, pace, mio Dio. Peace, peace, my God. All right. Ed said he wrote, this is a post-COVID poem, but it pretty much is close to it. And I am grateful that I was not in New York while this was all going on. And I salute all the people who made it through. What a horrible trauma on top of 9/11. It's just, boy, this city got hit hard. Saturnin. We cannot feel microbes in the palms of our hands or hear seconds. We can see the laser slice wind, but how it shaves beards remains mysterious. This talk of science and biologicals and viral crowns makes old men crawl into bowls of cotton, waiting to be plucked at some point by cadaver slaves humming Tin Pan Alley tunes. What's a pandemic but one more mortality wake-up call? Tongue dulled by wine salted and cabbage stews happily forgotten, buffed shoes shining, not worn, no more the perfect Windsor knot, because the definition for knot has swerved from necks to bandages. If ever we could color the subatomic particles and smash them up, would they look like a Ken Tisa quarantine drawing? How that could brighten the feet step by step in August air. The summer feels like a heavy cough that starts in the chest, lingers until it exhausts patience and runs up through the throat, out into the embracing air, carrying all manner of microbes, some of which are what could possibly infect a city or lab pyrotechnic 4 a.m., along with barrel snarls and cheap guns shooting. Poor man falls. Mercy walks down a different block. All right. Now, I'm going to go back to the ladies. So, one of the first people I met when I came to New York was Hannah Weiner. I don't know how many people know Hannah's work, but she was kind of amazing, and she really did see words on her forehead. Okay. So, and there you go. Hannah's cigar box, memory and invention. You meet a woman who says, I see words on my forehead, and she designs the brassieres. All of that is true. Okay, so I'll go back. You meet a woman who says, I see words on my forehead, and she designs brassieres. Why not? This is New York City, East 3rd Street, and other poets are sipping something and chatting, and the woman who sees words on her forehead has a generous laughter and kind manner, and why not see words on foreheads or arms or trees or the backs of scratchy jackets of hustling bums, all begging and laughing and drinking, as if not, and if not in the flop houses, then in the men's shelter across the street, where daycare children tell me the drunks are old and the younger ones addicts. Already they understand the distinctions and the dangers. It's an East Village world, and buildings are creaky and shaky with age and sadness. Many poets, mad and hungry, roam about at 3 a.m. on their way to Dave's Corner or some other dive, or if lucky, a bustling Cantonese restaurant where the words are visible as race walking and foreheads covered in curled bangs or scarves, and the green tea's sharp smokiness tosses mist and burrows dreams in liquid notions of ways to puzzle M. Duchamp's urinal or J. Cornell's cosmic boxes. Whole systems jeweled and shiny, encased and displayed, so that movie stars can see within them and find directions to Venus or Saturn, or restlessly return to Earth, East Village, New York City, and myriad cosmic stenciled cigar boxes. All right, and here's a poem that's not so joyous. One of my favorite albums of all times is the one by Dolly Parton, Emmy Lou Harris, and Linda Ronstadt. Oh, somebody knows that. Isn't it gorgeous? Well, they sing a song called Telling Me Lies. And here's my response. 1. Oh, Dolly Parton, Emmy Lou Harris, and Linda Ronstadt sing Telling Me Lies. Also, this mentions the Scott Sparrow Boys, and which was a famous case in the 1930s where all these young black men were charged with rape because they were riding on the same hobo train as these white women. 1. Somehow love was always the danger. Love, lust, that white girl on the run. And if perhaps somebody colored helped her, then he was a dead man walking, a lynched man foretold. Oh, also this is about the Lovings. Okay. This is a big poem. I just suddenly realized how big this poem is. Okay. Oh my God. Okay. Starting back. 1. Somehow love was always the danger. Love, lust, that white girl on the run, and if perhaps somebody colored helped her, then he was a dead man walking, a lynched man foretold. What are we to make of Mildred Loving, née Jeter, recently deceased? Her married name on the case striking down the last of America's anti-miscegenation laws. She got tired of seeing her wedding certificate compromised, her children bastarded in 17 states and the District of Columbia. How her family fought for the ordinary tribute to companionship, marriage. What a married name means in a world where a young woman rides the rails and suddenly becomes the woman endangering the lives of 7 men, 100 men. Not even a prize like Helen, just a hellion trying to get away from the men who cut her speech in half. The quote from the song, you don't know a man until you have to please him. 2. And if you're the dark girl, pretty and smiling, if you're the brown girl walking down the road, and if you're the blonde boy who loves, who wants to marry you, what could you do before 1964? How many walked away from their mothers, sisters, cousins, passed into another land just to have an ordinary life, where their name meant what they wanted it to be? White people invented a better ones? Some we know, some we don't. 3. This pretty melody spotlights rage. How your voices mingle the danger and lonely witness Southern women, white and black, lived through changes large and small, like the one that the Chief Justice's pen permitted, marriage between people whose skin thrived a different hue. And then I'm going to finish up with a couple of new poems. Well, actually, one very, very new and one very, very old. And not collected, as they say. That's what Arden said. This is not collected. All right. So 3 days ago, on St. Patrick's Day, I was wearing green too. I was incensed because besides the fact that you can't write woman, you can't write gay. And they were scouring through all of the Pentagon's history and removed the name Enola Gay, which of course was the bomber that, okay, yeah, I know, it's just, this is, you know, you feel like you want to bring back the Marx Brothers, but even they couldn't. So anyway, so the poem is not great. I will admit this, but the last part of it is pretty good, and then I'll finish with a much older poem that seems to be about right now. There's little poetry in marking privilege and its consequences. Could they be worse? Oh yes, they can be worse. Famines are man-made. So are dictatorships. If you don't believe me, well, you have not read the ordinary news of the day. You can't even read the room. You don't want to be in the room. You think there's arsenic in the coffee at the White House? Who drinks it every morning? Who remembers that the United States is the only nation to use an atomic bomb? That American exception, that casual carelessness, that shimmer at the knife's triangular point. And then finally, because I am a big Audra McDonald fan, and I'm sure many of you in the audience, if you're a New Yorker, you've seen her in something. All right. And she does a really good version of Come to Jesus. And here's my response. And I thank everybody for listening. Audra McDonald sings Come to Jesus. Well, once the dream was to find delight in the berry's moisture, or in the moist hands of a dark-eyed suitor, where once the dream was to weep as the lover scandalized, or walk dark roads unbrutalized, when once the dream was unfurled, a flag waving to wake each morning with the possibility to charm the valley or build a city, where once the walk was head high and bright-eyed, there is now talk of unlimited power. Whose hands will hold it? What will manifest? Where will the riot start? What spells will break? Where are the plutocrats' tunnels? Who will dam them up? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Who will dam them up? Good question. All right. Well, a round of applause for both of our readers, please. Thank you so much, Edward. Thank you so much, Patricia. Thank you, everyone on the live stream who joined us. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to all of you.